if you can hear us, then fuck it, let's
just do it. All right. Fuck it, we'll do it live.
Do it live, exactly. Like, fuck.
All right, so it's Trench Talk with your host, Flight of Icarus from MetalTrenches.com, and I am here interviewing Buffalo, New York band INERTIA about their new album, Teratoma. So first of all, there's a lot going on with your sound. That was the thing that definitely stood out to me from the beginning. I was actually having a conversation with Christian over at Mathcore Index, and we were talking over Messenger. When I recommended the band to him, he was listening and messaging me in real time, and it was fun to see him have the same reaction as me. He was like, oh, this first song, it's kind of like Deaf Heaven and Delta Sleep. And then he got to the next song, it was like, oh shit, it's like Beneath the Massacre. And then he's like, oh shit, this is jazz now. Like, what the hell is going on? So how would you describe your sound, first of all?
Go for it, doctor.
That's, it's kind of a loaded question. There's a lot going on. Mainly for me, and I probably speak to the other two dudes sitting with me right here, is that we just have like a variety of influences. So there's times where I find myself not really listening to that much metal music. It's kind of like a lot of post-rock, classical music, stuff like that. But then there's other times where I go on like a Beneath the Massacre, Ion Dissonance, Psyopus kick. So I think we really just wanted to try to blend all of that together in a coherent manner and not make it sound like part or song. Rather just like the uniqueness of all these different genres kind of coming together to create a whole unique sound that flows throughout.
And that was Khalil, the guitar player, speaking, and I wanted him to speak because most of the time it starts with him. He comes to the room with guitar ideas, and then we expand upon those. And not all the time, but most of the time it starts with Khalil. So I really feel like when you want to talk about influences, I like to start with him.
Right on.
So most of the songs start with guitar, and then you end up adding everything else on top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it was just like I wrote a lot of ideas, just kind of recorded them on my phone just to get an idea of what I wanted to sound like. And then maybe like a week later, I'd kind of reshape it or add a different texture to it. And then I'd bring it to Doug, our drummer, and Steve. And we would kind of work together to piece it out and, kind of make decisions on how long we want to extend parts, how short they should be, and what we should keep and what we shouldn't. So that was the main process, yeah.
And I heard you say Psyopus too, and I was glad you put that out there. That was something that jumped out to me as well as I was listening to a few of these guitar parts.
Yeah, well, we were like super lucky because we're from Buffalo and they're from Rochester, and those two cities are about an hour and a half apart. So we kind of all grew up when we were really young listening to Psyopus, and they're a huge influence on me. For sure, guitar-wise, just because they blow my mind. It's just like nothing I'd never heard before. I thought Dillinger was really crazy, and then I heard Psyopus, and I was just completely mind-fucked.
Yeah, it's definitely something different. I had a similar reaction to it. I was a pretty late comer to that band, but I remember listening to, I think it was the Burning Halo was the first song I heard from them, and I was just like, what the fuck even is this?
Yeah, that was one of their later albums.
Yeah.
And I was actually lucky enough to forge a friendship with the guitar player for a couple of years. I haven't talked to him recently, but we were pretty tight for a while, so he definitely had a big influence on me on how to go about structuring songs and writing things and different types of techniques to use.
Well, that's pretty awesome. So
yeah.
Does he still make music? I feel like I haven't heard anything on that front.
As far as I know, he doesn't really. I think he lives in upstate New York somewhere, kind of like Syracuse area. I know he's like real into jam music now, so I don't know. Hopefully Psyopus gets back together at some point.
Yeah, I mean, this really has been, I feel like the past 2 or 3 years, there's just been all these comebacks from like a lot of like mathcore and metalcore stuff just like coming out of nowhere and making new albums, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse.
Totally.
Speaking of other bands, I mean, are you all, I don't even know, are you all like a touring band? Are you playing shows? Are you just recording?
We just finished Teratoma like in October. We had our release show at the end of November, which went really well. And for the most part, we've just kind of been landlocked to Buffalo and Rochester. Haven't really got much offers for outside shows. I mean, we're all, busy guys with day jobs too. We've just now started to throw the feelers out for like outside of the area playing shows. We generally do, every other month we do some local show, and they always are fun. We always have a good reception, and it's a good time. But as of now, we're just now getting back onto the playing because we locked ourselves away pretty much all summer to finish Teratoma, and because we did it 100% ourselves, recorded it. Doug, the drummer, mixed it and mastered it and everything. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's nice to finally. Our next show is we're opening for Dying Fetus in February.
Oh, holy shit! Is that like one of the bigger bands you've played with?
That's probably one of the bigger ones. Number 12, Looks Like You, was another bigger one we opened for.
Yeah.
And Filth, which was a fucking sweet show.
Yeah.
Opening for Filth was a good time.
Lorna Shore.
Yeah.
That's the other one.
Dude, number 12 is one of my all-time favorites. I can't wait to hear what they cook up because they're just nuts.
Yeah, speaking of comebacks, right? I'm super stoked that they're back making music.
Any sort of dream bands that, like, if you could play with any band, who would it be?
Doug?
Beneath the Massacre, Ion Dissonance, Despised Icon.
That would be a nice lineup.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, probably the same as Doug, all those bands. I'd really be stoked to just tour with anybody, to be honest.
Yeah, same here.
Between the Buried and Me is playing in Rochester next month, a week before the Dying Fetus show. And I just composed a really sensitive, complex email to the booking agent being like, I know we have a show next week, but can we please do this Rochester BT BAM show because we're kind of fucking meant to open for them, sort of, maybe. Because the promoter's the same, and he has this rule, like, if you're playing one show locally, you can't play within the time frame of that because it takes away from the hype and the stuff like that of it. It's kind of a rule he has, so.
I think I'd be stoked to tour the Contortionists, too. I can't believe I didn't mention that band.
Yeah.
They're a huge influence on all of us, especially me. Just how they've progressed from being like a real proggy deathcore with melodic elements to just like full-on prog, just really beautiful ambient music. So I have a lot of respect
if
for
Contortionists could like tour and redo all of Exoplanet and get on that tour, that would be just fine with me.
Yeah, it's been cool to hear some of these bands, just how much they've sort of evolved and changed over time. I mean, you were talking about Between the Buried and Me. Obviously, their newer stuff sounds very different from their old stuff. That was something that I got into probably around the Silent Circus era. So, man, many years ago. And just
many moons ago.
Yeah. I still remember picking up that CD in this old CD store back in Illinois, and just that was back when you could kind of just find random stuff you'd never listened to and bring it up to the shelf and put it in a disc player and put the headphones on and try something new. That one definitely just blew my mind.
Yeah, man, those were the days. I have a lot of nostalgic memories going to the record store and even just being like, oh, this artwork looks cool. I wonder what this band sounds like. It's like that led, the floodgates to a whole different genre and all different bands. And,
Glass Casket, what's this? Holy fuck.
I mean, I suppose you still have that online, but it's just something different about having it in your hand and reading through the artwork and all that stuff,
Oh, totally. I still buy physical copies for that reason. I'm too cheap for vinyl, but I've got a pretty stacked CD shelf. I'm starting to run out of space, and my friends are all like, why are you even doing this? Like, you can just download it, man. I'm like, it's not the same. It's not the same.
But it looks so cool when you step back and you see your whole fucking library. It's like, I own all this music.
Yeah.
Right?
And I always have this vision in my head that I'll like invite people over and be like, oh yeah, and look at this, and they'll be all impressed, but that never happens.
Now they're just like, why don't you just use iTunes, bro?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I hear you too. Like, I had that same experience of just seeing an album cover that looked really interesting and just popping it in. Sometimes it was great, sometimes it was shit.
Right.
Have you ever heard of so when I was thinking about, what I always do the kind of for fans of section, because it's just a quick, easy way for people to look at that and be like, oh, okay, I like that, so I'll check these guys out too. And I was having a really hard time really nailing down another band that kind of sounded, that encompassed all of the different elements that you're doing. And the one thing I came up with, there's this group called Torrential Downpour.
Never heard of them.
Yeah.
Highly recommend checking them out. They're supposedly working on a new album, but the last one, it's up on Bandcamp. The last album they did is just incredible, and kind of same idea where it's mixing progressive music with jazz and heavier, more death metal elements. Just kind of jumping all over the place. There's post metal tracks. It's a treat. So I highly recommend that.
Definitely be checking that out tonight.
So quid pro quo, any underground bands that you feel like deserve more attention that you want to kind of put out there?
Yeah, there's this band from Buffalo called Ish Kabibble.
I think I've heard of it.
Father and a son. The son plays bass and the dad plays drums. It's instrumental, and they're just like crazy prog, funk, primacy, grindy, like everything. They're really incredible. And those two guys are also in another band in Buffalo called Short Attention Span Theater, which is a full band, guitar, bass, drums, vocals, and they're very like Protest the Hero meets BT
Oh, you're
band.
speaking my language,
they're
man.
really cool, and they need a lot more exposure. But those would be my two, I think: Ish Kabibble and Short Attention Span Theater.
Cool.
I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that.
I was thinking Ish Kabibble myself.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good local bands around. It's hard to pinpoint them all, but yeah, those would be my two. They're like extremely talented.
Yeah, and I mean, being in New York, you're, or at least near one of the meccas of just sort of underground metal music right now, it feels like. Any thoughts on just how you would describe the scene out there and some of the bands you're enjoying playing with or hearing in the area?
Now, when you say New York, I have a question for you. What? Because we're from West New York, up by Niagara Falls.
Right, you're not in the thick of it in the city.
Yeah, because usually, and I'm not saying this is no downplay to you or anything, but like most people assume it's New York City and then everything else is upstate New York. New York's a big fucking state.
Yeah.
Our neck of the woods, we had a really good scene. Like when you wanted, like when we were talking about the nostalgic Psyopus and old BT Bam days.
It dies today.
Yeah, it dies today.
Every Time I Die, still kicking it. They're from Buffalo.
Yep.
It kind of died out a little bit. The scene kind of withered away and was like nothing. And then over the past maybe like 5 years, I would say, it's slowly getting a resurgence, and people are actually playing out, and people are going out to local shows, and bands are coming back. Like there's actually decent metal shows coming around. We have a lot of fun playing with some dudes in this band called Ashes. They're good friends of ours. Allegiant. Ashes is kind of like your straight up metalcore. They got 2 vocalists. Good stuff. There's a band called Greta More. They're just fucking
Fall of Troy.
Fall of Troy instrumental. They
hell
fucking
yeah.
jam out on stage, and I love seeing them, and I really want to play with them.
Yeah. There's like you mentioned, Allegiant. They're like very mid 2000s OG hardcore, like Ghost Inside type stuff. There's Sleepers. They're tight. They're like your really heavy
Beat down
tempo. Like there's a lot of good bands. It's like a lot of the hardcore metalcore type stuff. But I mean, we love that stuff. But we just like the tech and the jazz and the math and
it's refreshing to
all
see
that other good stuff.
It's refreshing to see the shit coming out with Wordworks again. You know what I mean? It's like there is a scene now where if you asked this question maybe 4 or 5 years ago, it's like nothing's really going on. We're playing in our basement and we get a show sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What do you attribute that shift to, where suddenly it's kind of picking up again?
It's a good question.
Yeah, I really don't know.
I mean, it's got to have something to do with the bands that are coming out, right? Because like the bands that we've mentioned all came out kind of around the same time, and it's kind of been almost a network. Like word of mouth almost gets around, and everybody agrees that we need to get a scene going again. and everybody kind of gets along. As far as I know, there isn't any like stupid bullshit drama rivalries, and we go out to local shows even if we don't play them, and there's tons of people there. But as far as like the catalyst for it, I don't.
Venues opening and reopening as well.
Yeah, that too.
Over the past few years.
Yeah.
There's been more venues popping up which have been accepting of the idea of playing metal and stuff like that. That was kind of a thing for a while where there was venues, but none of them wanted to book a metal show just for security purposes, I guess. But everything seems to be coming around.
Yeah, there's a couple places that are just now doing. There's a place called Good Bar, and they're doing a thing like once a month. Good Bar goes heavy, and
Mohawk Place.
Yeah, and a lot of it, like you said, they were unwilling to book metal shows, and we kind of had to, not us specifically, but people in the scene had to be like, everything's gonna be cool, no one's gonna break their neck. Let us do a show and prove it to you. You will make money, and they've made money, and it's been going good so far. Knock on wood.
Well, speaking of, you talked about just all this technical focus coming around. I was curious in terms of whether you all had like professional training, or some of you did. I mean, how did you all just come to this place where you're playing this very proggy technical music?
You want me to take that?
Yeah, take it away.
We should all.
Yeah.
Well, all of us have been playing in bands for a long time. All three of us were in a previous band together. So that definitely helped as far as having a rapport and knowing how to work together and talk to each other. Me personally, as a vocalist, I don't have any special training. Just it's fun, and metal's the most fun thing to play and stuff like that. What about you, Khalil?
Yeah, well, I've been taking guitar lessons for a really long time. I started, I think it was like around 4th grade-ish. So I took lessons all the way up to college. And then I went to music for college, and I was like kind of opened up to the classical music world, because I didn't know that you had to like classical was the thing where I was going, but they told me I had to get a classical guitar, which is basically like a nylon string acoustic finger style stuff.
Right.
So I got really into that, and then I went to school for a really long time and studied classical music really hard. And I've always loved metal. So between like growing up and taking the electric lessons and then being in college for like 8 years and studying classical music, it really helped like mesh the two worlds together. And that was like a huge influence on Teratoma structure and harmony wise. Like, 5 years ago, I would have had no idea how to go about creating songs like with specific structures and unique harmonies and ways to affect the listener. But because of school and just I just practice all day, every day, because that's just what I do. I have no life other than guitar and drinking beer, pretty much. So.
And I'm going to brag on your behalf because you're being too humble. He's got his doctorate in classical guitar, so all these years of guitar have paid off for him. And I'd say he's the most educated out of the three of us as far as music is concerned.
What about you, Douglas?
Well, shit, you and I met, 12 years ago now it's been?
Yeah.
The first time I met Khalil, we actually jammed together. That was how we met. So, and we were jamming with another friend of ours, and he kind of flaked out on it, but he was like, well, here you can have Khalil's number. So I was like, all right, sweet. And then the two of us kept jamming, and then I ended up in the band with Steve that he had mentioned prior, and later on we got Khalil involved, and like Steve said, that's where they kind of built the chemistry and stuff. So, and then there was like that lull, and not just the scene, but like all three of us kind of weren't doing anything either. And then now here we are again.
I've never asked you this, Doug. How long have you been playing drums?
I asked my parents that, and my mom said I was hitting stuff when they came out of the
So
womb.
since before you can remember this shit?
Yeah, and been playing my whole life.
Trying to
But
punch your way out.
really taking it seriously, like these last 4 or 5 years, I would say. It's like I practice every single day, just like Khalil.
Yeah, I think knowing, like, all three of us have known each other for a really long time. So that was a huge part of writing all these songs. Like, we're not afraid to be like, oh, we don't like that, or we should do this. We we leave ourselves open to doing whatever we want, which is super refreshing. Because I feel like a lot of bands kind of put limits on themselves, like, oh, we can't have blast beats, or we can't do breakdowns, or we can't, have clean guitar. With us, it's just like, let's try anything and everything, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So it was like, I feel super blessed to be able to like be a part in a band that does that, because it's pretty rare, I think.
Yeah.
Oh. Usually when I get a new riff from Cleo, I'm just like, what am I supposed to do? What the hell?
That's the great thing about being able to write a riff and then bring it to them, is I can just try to fuck with their heads as much as possible and let them suffer.
It's fun. It's like a challenge every time.
Seriously, that's a word for it.
Like, where can we take this?
Well, I always like to hear people talk about this, because I feel like it seems like the stigma around people who listen to metal has kind of changed a lot over the years, but I feel like people's overall impression from the outside of what metal music really is still kind of like, oh, it's this big, dumb, heavy, loud music. And I have to I constantly surprise people, and I'm like, oh yeah, like these people are like jazz trained musicians, and they're classically trained musicians, and they look at me sideways like, what? And I'm like, no, yeah, that's a thing. Like, that's a pretty big thing, especially now. And especially, I feel like in the underground scene, like it's cool to see that some of the most popular kind of underground bands are super technical and aren't just kind of by the numbers, chorus, verse, chorus kind of bands.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's, I don't know why it's so hard for people to realize that, but I mean, it is like a very sophisticated genre, because there's really no rules to it, I mean, a lot of people that write music have rules, but I don't know. You can just kind of take a lot of musical chances, and it was cool for us because we weren't afraid to be proggy or post-rocky or write an instrumental jam, like there's something for everybody to latch onto, which is super cool for me to be a part of.
Yeah, and there really is something for everyone, particularly on this album. I mean, you've got tracks like Relax, which are just straight up like, post-rock, math rock kind of stuff. The more like almost deathcore type stuff with the really heavy breakdowns. And I was curious, like, is there a concept around this album? And also, what is a teratoma?
Steve, you should answer this.
A teratoma is a tumor made of different bodily tissues. So it's like a growth that you can get that can have hair and teeth and shit like that. Like, if you want to be grossed out, just Google image search teratoma, and you'll get some interesting
So it's in keeping with the album
you're not
art.
When you're searching it, though. But beyond that, there really is no concept overall to the album. We took care with how to space out like what track goes where order-wise, but the album, like all the songs all together, probably took 2 years to write and accumulate, and one song even was co-opted from our last band that we were all in that never really got used. So we're like, hey, that's basically a free track in the bag. So Pachyderm actually is from our last band we were in. We just modified it ever so slightly. Yeah, kicked the tempo up fucking 3 times. And
that's a good one too. Yeah, I'm glad. I'm always glad when bands take their time too. I honestly get annoyed with the bands that like every year, or sometimes even every 2 years, it's like they're putting out an album and they're usually not as good as if you take your time and really, make sure you're getting everything right. I listen to a lot of Henry Rollins doing like interviews and his spoken word and stuff, and he talks about how for some of their best albums they would write the music, but then they would tour with it for a good year or so before they even thought about actually recording it, and could kind of iron out what worked, what didn't, let the song sort of evolve on its own, and then get to the point where now we're ready to actually lay this down and put it down, to the vinyl.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that's a really good idea to like unwind after you write something, and like, cause in months, years from now, you have new influences and, you all get better at your instrument and stuff like that. So it seems really necessary. I think we're going to probably try to play as many shows and with this new material with this album and try to get out of state as much as we can and just grind it out, you know.
Spread the word.
Yeah, spread the good Inertia Teratoma word.
Any personal favorite tracks?
Doug?
That's a tough one. I think Monkey's Paw's like the burner. It's like really hard to play, but I'm like proud of playing it, you know, being able to play it.
That's mine. That's my favorite for sure.
Yeah, Bubonic has grown on me a lot for especially having played it live now a couple times. The crowd really eats up that middle breakdown. Like when we were first starting out, no one ever moved for us ever, even, you know, during our heavier parts and whatnot. Like nothing. Just nothing.
Yeah, these last couple shows have been pretty wild. People have been going pretty insane for us. So which is awesome feeling.
What's your favorite track?
Man, it's tough. I love them all, but I think my favorite track would probably be Welcome Back. Just because I'm a sucker for melodicism and epicness and stuff like that. And I was really proud how that one came together, where it's kind of like first half is techie and brutal, and then second half is kind of melodic. And it doesn't feel forced, in my opinion, which is always a really hard thing to do, I think, is to try to mesh elements without them being too calculated or forced.
Like a try-hard.
It seemed natural. But I don't know. I just really like the ending of that one a lot. So that's probably my favorite. Welcome Back.
Cool.
My favorite is probably a three-way tie between Bubonic, or at least the second half of Bubonic, and then Lamb's Breath, and then Die Tension, the first track.
Lamb's Breath is definitely up there for me, too.
Something about the fucking Die Tension, that first track, just, like, I don't know what it is. I really like that one.
We just named, like, every song on the album.
Well, they're all good in their own different way. But yeah, I am definitely partial to Monkey's Paw. I also really like Bubonic. I mean, I'm always leaning more towards the faster, heavier songs, but I really do appreciate, again, songs like Relax and Welcome Back for, it gives the album a lot more dynamics, keeps things interesting, really breaks up the flow. Because you can get too much of a good thing. I've listened to plenty of albums where if it's at 11 the entire time, it just starts to all run together and get berating, and this album's not like that at all.
Thanks, man.
That's good. I appreciate that. We really tried to have like apexes in certain spots, you know, for people to catch their breath, people to while out, a little bit of everything, you know.
Yeah, it's called Relax for a reason.
Yeah,
yeah, I picked up on that.
For me, that's actually the hardest song to play, Relax, believe it or not.
I could believe that. Yeah. Any other thoughts, just in general, about the album, favorite parts to perform, other things you want people to know about it?
My thoughts are just the response so far has been fucking beyond anything we could have imagined. We just focused and tunnel visioned on this thing so much for so long that when it was done, we're just like, okay, we got to do this. We put it out, and next thing you know, it's like
some hype.
Yeah, like we thought people would dig it, but it's like just, you know, the response has been pretty great all around.
Yeah.
Like we're getting, you know, like this interview, we never would have thought. Seriously, somebody would have contacted us to say, hey, we want to talk to you guys. Like this alone is really fucking cool for us.
Pretty crazy. Yeah, this is super cool.
So I just feel really glad that it's paid off in a sense. Like it's like cool, people enjoy it, not just myself, because in the end you want to make something that you enjoy, but you also want other people to enjoy it, and I'm just really satisfied that other people enjoy it.
Yeah, I completely agree with like Steve. Like, you know, the main reason that we make music is just for people to connect with it and listen to it and enjoy it. We have fun with it. So it's been pretty mind blowing, just like people reviewing it. Like that's not even close to Buffalo, you know, just totally outside of our scene. I didn't really expect that, so it's quite humbling.
Yeah, humbling is a good word.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we all want to spread it around. There's a kind of group of us that, you know, we meet other writers over time and other people from other sites, and we tend to just sort of message each other, like I was saying with Mathcore Index. Like when we come across something good, we want to make sure it gets kind of maximum distribution, so to speak. So I already saw that Mathcore Index posted it on their Facebook, and it was blown up pretty well over there. I imagine.
I was pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
He lets us know anytime like somebody shares it. It's like you get a text. It's like this page shared us. It's like,
Yeah. And they do a monthly podcast. I'm hoping, Christian, if you're listening, you need to shout this band out on yours as well. Just get this out to as many people as possible.
Appreciate that.
We have was it Technical Music Review?
Yeah, we're doing another podcast from they're like a little metal webzine place.
Yeah, it's a local Buffalo-based heavy metal podcast, and they're interviewing us at the end of January.
Yeah.
I don't know when it's going to be out, but that's something else.
They're cool people. They write about a lot of tech music that I just have no idea. There's so many new bands out there. I can't keep up with them. It's just like, who are these people? They're all amazing though, you know.
Yeah.
But like I said, some of it's just like I go through spurts where I just can't even listen to metal for a while. It's nothing against it. I just, you know, really like bands like This Will Destroy You and Explosions in the Sky and stuff like that. So
yeah, you gotta break it up. I went through a phase this summer where I was going back and listening to all this old pop punk music I used to listen to when I was like 16.
It's fun, you know.
Yeah. All right. Well, any final thoughts before we wind down here?
Anything?
Just thanks a lot for taking the time to talk to us, dude. We appreciate it. Thanks for listening.
Yeah,
thanks for sharing it and spreading it. We appreciate all that from the bottom of our hearts.
Truly appreciate it, man. Hopefully we get out to the West Coast sometime.
Yeah. If you ever find yourself in Portland, please let me know.
I'd love to. That's our goal, is to just take this on the road and just grind. So hopefully you'll be hearing good things from us in the future.
Yeah, I hope so. I'll be waiting for it. I'm following your Bandcamp now, so
awesome, dude. Oh yeah, thank you so much, man.
Cool.
All right, man.
All right, all of you intrepid listeners out there, hopefully you enjoyed our first interview. And before I sign off, I just wanted to say, if this is your first time here, please do hit that subscribe button, follow, share us with your friends. And if you'd like to hear more of this, honestly, I was kind of sad watching the clock tick down towards the 30-minute mark here and would have liked to have gone longer. But in order for us to do that, we need to get to a point where we can pay the monthly subscription fee to increase our upload limit and therefore be able to do things like hour-plus long interviews and still keep up the pace that we're currently doing here. So with that in mind, feel free to check out our Patreon too. I mean, $1 a month, it doesn't seem like much. It's your couch change, but it makes a hell of a difference to pushing forward what I'm trying to do here. But until next time, I will see you in the trenches.